Buddy, welcome to the first episode of Me and JT. I'm Mike, and with me I have...
Me, JT.
So, if you guys don't know, you might have heard JT before. He's been on like one or two streams of mine, and he's been on one or two episodes of the first season of the GreyStreet Radio podcast, which, by the way, GreyStreet Radio podcast isn't canceled. It's just there's a lot of stuff going on. So, episode 2 should come out. I think this month, episode 2 will come out of the GreyStreet Radio podcast. But in the meantime, I was on Twitter, and I realized that I have a lot of opinions about music, and I wanted to start a podcast with someone who I could talk about music with. Now, that's not the primary purpose of this podcast. This podcast is going to be a weekly podcast, with today's episode being one side of the coin. You could say it's kind of a coin toss, you know. One day one episode it'll be this, the next episode it'll be that. Basically, today is going to be, we're going to have pre-recorded episodes and then live episodes, and those are going to be week by week. So this episode is pre-recorded, and this is going to be our review of the Batman. And we'll talk about next week's episode near the end. But before we start, I want to shout out my band's podcast, and my band's channel, and my band's album. So if you haven't heard those things, the links will be in the description. But enough of self-promoing. JT, what did you think of the Batman?
So I've seen the Batman twice already, and I grew up with the character. I've read the comics, I watched the movies, the cartoons, so almost every medium of Batman. And after seeing it twice, I still find it a fantastic comic book movie and Batman story. So to give it a score, after 2 viewings, I would still leave it as a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I didn't grow up reading the comics. I did play like the games, and I watched the cartoons and all that stuff, and I watched all the movies growing up. Like Batman has always been like my second favorite character, comic book hero, following Spider-Man. So, but this movie to me really strikes at the core of what Batman is. You know, Batman at the end of the day is not just a symbol. He's not supposed to be a symbol of fear. He's actually a symbol of hope. And this movie really strikes at that. Now, I initially gave the movie a 9 out of 10, but after my second watching and a lot of thinking, I dropped it down to an 8 out of 10, which is still a pretty high score. I just have a few issues with the plot, and we'll go into that. But overall, yeah, everything about this movie is pretty amazing. Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, Jeffrey Wright, surprise John Turturro. I didn't even know he was in this movie till we saw it. Colin Farrell, like all of them do amazing jobs. Matt Reeves did a great job directing. You know, it's a very Greg Fraser as the cinematographer. You know, I mean, the shots. I mean, you've probably seen the shots all over Twitter and Instagram and social media. Like, it's visually an amazing movie as well. And musically, Michael Giacchino does a great job. You know, that main Batman theme, that dun, 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 dun. That, like, basically me, JT, and the whole friend group, every time, like, we've been hanging out, we just start singing that fucking phrase now from the song. But, you know, that theme of Batman's being based off Something in the Way by Nirvana. I think it's a really good theme for Batman. It really adds like this menace and epicness to him. And then as for Paul Dano's theme, which would be it's basically the Ave Maria, but in a minor key. And this is actually important to the plot, so I won't go too into that. You know, just overall, great soundtrack. But
Just to add on, so on the soundtrack, there's actually themes for each character. Well, minus the Penguin, but there's a theme like for Batman, which is dun 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 dun. But the Riddler is actually more quiet, haunting, and very creepy because on a piano, but it's very slow and somber. And for Catwoman's theme, it's more jazzy and
yeah, her theme is like really a callback to, because this movie is a callback to neo-noir films, and her theme is like the most obvious example of that. Like, it's very clear that that like her theme is very noir style, a lot of piano and violins in her theme.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I find their themes to be fantastic. Like, I love her theme and Riddler's and Batman, and I wish there was one for Penguin, but he he wasn't he didn't appear as much as everyone else.
Yeah, he Penguin doesn't have a big role in this film. Um, but speaking of people's roles in this film, now be warned, we're gonna get right into spoilers now. I'm basically gonna go through the plot, and then me and JT are either gonna point out issues or points of praise for the film. Now, I'm reading the plot off of like the little summary they have here on Wikipedia. I'll add details as I see fit, things that I feel are important to the story. But anyways, JT, do you have any other notes about the movie that are non-spoiler before we get into it?
Um, so the way that the movie kind of presents itself, aside from being a film noir detective story, is that whether you are into Batman or not, if you, I guess, played the games or watched cartoons or just been exposed to that type of medium of Batman, there are certain parts of the movie that you would instantly recognize. Me personally, the film, the film's score reminds me a lot of the Batman animated series, and there are certain scenes that feel like they pulled right out of the Arkham games. So there's a lot of inspiration, not just from the comics, but from also video games, the cartoons, and other different forms that to me enhance the experience of watching the film.
Right. So, let's get into this. On Halloween, Gotham City Mayor Don Mitchell Jr. is murdered by a man calling himself the Riddler. Reclusive billionaire Bruce Wayne, who has operated for 2 years as the vigilante Batman, investigates alongside the Gotham City Police Department. Lieutenant James Gordon discovers a message left for Batman by the Riddler, but Commissioner Pete Savage berates him for allowing a vigilante to enter the crime scene and forces Batman to leave. Soon after, the Riddler kills Savage and leaves another message for Batman. That's kind of out of order a little bit, but whatever. We'll get into that. So I think the opening of this film is really good. Basically, it starts off with the title sequence with the Ave Maria, not the minor key version that is the Riddler's theme, the regular Ave Maria playing, and you hear heavy breathing, and you see through the lenses of a binocular someone spying on who we find out is the mayor. And I think when I first saw this, I saw the kid in the samurai outfit, and I was like, not samurai, sorry, ninja. And I was like, for a split second, I was like, wait a minute, are they doing? Is this their version of like Bruce Wayne? And I think that was deliberate. I think it was deliberately framed that way, so you would think that, oh, this might be Bruce Wayne, but it actually isn't. This is the son of the mayor, Don Mitchell, and he's actually a decent focus on this movie. He shows up quite a bit. You would think that like, oh, this kid's just gonna show up for the death of Don Mitchell, but then disappear. But no, they very much focus on him for a good bit in this movie. And in the scene where they're investigating the crime scene, Batman ends up, locking onto the kid because he can. And this is one of the things that people are saying that Robert Pattinson's performance is bland. I feel like they might not. I don't want to insult them, but I feel like they don't have the ability to perceive someone's emotion just through their eye. Like Robert Pattinson does a great job expressing himself using like only his eyes. Like the way he looks at the kid, like you can see the pain inside of Batman just from the way he looks and identifies with the kid who's lost his dad. And if you pay attention, they also say that the person who found the dad's body was the kid. So Batman's really identifying with Don Mitchell's son throughout this scene. Also, one funny detail is I've seen some people complain that there are no jokes in this movie. There's plenty of jokes. They're just not knock knock. Like they're not like quips like in Marvel movies. Which, by the way, I do like a good portion of the MCU, but that's not the kind of tone that we're going for in this film. This film is very much a darker film, but there's a lot of points of levity. Like a good example of that is in the scene when the forensic, I believe it's a forensic scientist. I think that's who he is. He's like trying to like look at the body, and Batman's in the way, and he's just like, oh, he's like awkwardly like, oh, excuse me, and he's trying to get past him. Like that's like a funny little scene, but it's not like a joke, right? But it's a point of levity, and there's plenty of points of levity throughout this film.
See, that's what I enjoy about these type of movies, especially for DC, because I know a lot of people, yourself included, like you don't love or like most of the DC movies, but there are certain films, especially the Batman, that really stand out to be like their execution, in my opinion, pulls off way better than a lot of MCU films. Like for example, the people complaining about not having no jokes in this film, but I value that a movie's telling a story without shoehorning, like putting in little cheap quips and like basically devaluing the moment by making it lighthearted and making the characters feel um, like they're joking or they're trying to mess around, and it kind of defeats the purpose of the moment and it takes you out of it. But this movie actually takes its audience seriously, and it doesn't like devalue your intelligence. It actually is telling you a story, and it's expecting you to like follow along and understand, and they want you to understand the characters instead of just throwing jokes here and there. But like the level of longevity, the jokes are very subtle in my opinion, and it's there to kind of like break a little bit of the tension, but not so much where it takes you out of it, you know? That's I think it's one of the film's strengths.
Yeah, I do think that like it's not about like I think you can put jokes during serious scenes. I mean, they're literally looking at a dead body here and they put a joke in there. But the thing is like it's not a joke that takes you out of the scene. It's a joke that's like, okay, yeah, Batman's standing there like a fucking wall and this guy's trying to get through. Like that's something that could like genuinely happen. It's not like I'll give a okay, there's good examples of that, right? This is a good example of a joke in a serious moment to add levity to a scene. A bad example of that is when in Endgame when Thor is saying that he should be the one to like snap his fingers and undo that the Thanos snap, and he's and basically Iron Man's telling him like that you can't do it, like you're not able to do it, and Thor's like I have, do you know what runs through these veins? But then War Machine cuts him off by saying cheese whiz, and it's like this is a very serious moment for Thor's character because Thor's dealing with the whole thing with Endgame is I think they really messed up with Thor. And not because of the direction they went, because Thor, rightfully so, is basically like traumatized by the fact that he failed to kill Thanos. Like he feels it's his fault that Thanos got away with the snap because he didn't kill him right away. He wanted revenge. So like this scene is like pretty much like the climax of that emotional arc, and you undercut it with War Machine's cheese whiz line. So that's a really bad example of doing a joke like that. Meanwhile, here it's just kind of like a natural, real quick joke that's just like, yeah, that's realistic for like that to happen. Also, another thing is like there are people complaining about the amount of jokes in this movie. I honestly think there's more jokes in this movie than there are in like The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, off the top of my head, like, there's a few jokes the Joker tells that are, like, kind of funny. But for the most part, that movie is very, very serious. There's, like, very, very few jokes that I can think off the top of my head. Um, but anyways, do you have any other, things to point out about this intro sequence from the movie?
Um. So
Oh, wait a minute. I just realized. So this paragraph didn't even mention the opening of Batman. So, okay, sorry. I'll put that in myself. Wikipedia is kind of screwing us over on this. The movie opens up Batman very, very well. Batman has a self, like, basically is the narrator of this film, because basically, since he's doing his Batman stuff every single night, so the days start to blend together for him. So to keep track of the days, he starts writing in a journal. I think that's pretty great. As someone who's been working for the last 15, how long? I don't even know. The last like 15 or 16 days, I've been working every single day, and I've been working a graveyard shift. So I kind of, obviously, I'm not saying I'm working as hard as Batman. I'm not insane.
Yeah,
But
you're
I'm
not
saying,
beating
like,
up
when you're
fucking
working,
villains.
yeah, I mean, not yet. But, like, I am doing work every night. And when you work every night and you don't have that break from that, when it's every single night, the days start to blend together. Because for most people, what separates their work from their life are their days off. And I don't have that right now. I'm gonna get that next week, and I'm not complaining about it either. It's not. I'm not forced into this position. I accepted this position. I'm just using it as an example to say that that kind of makes sense to me. That the days would kind of blend together like that, and to keep a journal and to keep track of everything that happens seems like a good way to excuse the narration, but also a realistic thing that someone might do. But the way they introduce Batman in this movie is they really, more than any other Batman film, I think, they really touch on the fear aspect of this Batman. This Batman recognizes that he cannot be everywhere at once. And realistically, unless you are Superman or the Flash, you really can't be everywhere at once. But what you can do is instill a fear that you might be there. And that's what Batman does. They show three different crimes taking place. They show a robber who's trying to steal from
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 like a
like a
grocery store. Yeah,
7-Eleven.
7-Eleven.
Yeah, yeah. And this guy runs away, but then, a helicopter passes by, flashing him, and he sees the bat symbol, and then he looks to the side and he sees this really, really dark hallway. Like, it's pretty much pitch black. And just the idea that Batman might be there and he might beat the shit out of me because because I'm committing a crime. Like, he literally gets hit by like a car. He doesn't die, but he gets rammed by a car because he's like so scared
Yeah, like
and
yeah,
worried,
like
like he might get beat up by Batman, and he runs away.
he stares into like the alleyway, and then like that paranoia and fear and staring into the shadows, like anticipation of like Batman might be there, he might not be there. So he slowly backs up onto the street without realizing that a car was about to hit him, and then he gets run over, which he gets up after that. So that kind of snaps him out of it, and he just runs away.
Yeah, he's just like, you know what, fuck this shit. I'm not gonna deal with Batman. And then there's this little gang of hooligans that are like spray painting the bank. I think they also like broke into the bank. I don't know if they stole money from the bank, but they basically like they basically ransacked it. Like they threw like they like destroyed the windows or whatever. And then they see the bat symbol, they look, they're like, oh shit, it's darkness, and they're like, okay, you know what, fuck it, let's get out of here. And then the third gang, they're basically these group of people. They were like, I guess skeleton face paint. I don't know what you'd call it.
Yeah, I think it's
Um,
like Dia de los Muertos face paint. So it's
yeah,
like a group of guys that are it's like a group of people that kind of do initiations. So they kind of pull pranks or like they beat up other people, but they're just like
yeah. They'll beat up just like they're watching a video of one of them just fucking decking a random jogger, which I mean is kind of cool, but it's obviously not right.
which by the
Shouldn't
way,
do
they
that,
post
even though
that
it's
shit on like something that looks like TikTok, and when they actually one of them passed like in the video they passed by the guy, and then like when they turn around and hit him, they all start like laughing and like praising it, and like they just do it for the views, which I think that's kind of funny on like how that's reflected in like real life.
yeah, it's like those really stupid challenges. Like obviously we haven't devolved into the point where we're hurting innocent people, but there were people doing like the lick the toilet seat challenge, the where they would go into the grocery store and lick the fucking ice cream. Like really fucking degenerate shit has been done for fucking trends before. Obviously, nothing that actually involves like physically harming another person.
Not that we know
But I
of.
mean, not that we know of. Well, if, I guess if it was happening, it would have got. It would have. I'm sure it would have been a big story if it would have been like, okay, now people are starting to hurt each other for trends.
Right.
Um, but as far as we know, that hasn't happened yet. Hopefully, if we ever devolve to that state, we will have like a Batman or something to take care of that.
Yeah, hopefully.
I mean, I assume the social media would just ban your video, like honestly. But putting that aside, that's basically what the case is. And then there's this one kid that's with them who has only half of his face painted in. That means, I mean, you're led to assume, okay, so he's only halfway into the gang. So then there's this Asian dude who's like walks away from them because he's like, oh, they're noisy, whatever. Or that's what you presume. And then the leader, I assume, who, by the way, he looks a lot like Nostalgia Critic. I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks that. I remember hearing a lot of people say that. But he looks like the fucking Nostalgia Critic.
Oh my god. Just put on glasses
with
and like
face
a
paint
fucking
on.
fedora, and then you'll just be Nostalgia Critic canon in the Batman universe.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I really, like, the first time I saw the trailer, I was like, why does this fucking dude look like the Nostalgia Critic? But he basically says, okay, that's our next target. So they get off the train, or the metro, or subway, whatever you want to call it, and they follow this dude, and they basically are telling the new kid, okay, you got to beat the shit out of him. And he's about to, but then he notices the bat symbol, and from the shadows, you hear these, and this is really great sound design. There's these loud, booming footsteps, and out of the shadow comes Batman. And I just want to say, his costume is so cool. I really, really like his bat suit in this.
Oh, I also
Um,
want to point out that the Batsuit is not only great in terms of functionality, but I've also heard complaints that this Batman is too skinny. But when you think about it, his body type and the way that he looks and the muscle he has actually fits with this Batman, because this Batman, he's super fast, he's very agile, and he's strong enough to beat up criminals. So there's actually a video by a YouTuber named Jax Blade, shout out to him, that he actually explains why the body type that Batman has in this film actually makes sense, because he has a UFC oh my god, yeah, a UFC MMA fighter type of build, so that way you don't have to be packing muscle, but you are still strong enough and be lean to be able to move fast and hit hard too. So that's why I get that this Batman is kind of skinny, but I can also give it the excuse that it does serve a purpose and it does work well with this version, in my opinion. But the fact that this Batman is so haunting and he walks out of that alleyway and he's not like built, but he's still menacing despite his physicality, or like how physical he is. But yeah, that's a little like detail I wanted to share.
yeah, Jax Blade is a bodybuilder YouTuber, right?
He's not necessarily a bodybuilder, but he is like like a athletic trainer. So he loves comic books and anime, and he actually does videos on like how like certain anime characters, how you can actually train to get that body type or as close to it as you can. And he does some reviews here and there, but he's a really like nice and awesome guy. I would recommend watching his videos if you're interested in getting in shape and looking like your anime characters.
Yeah. So he comes out, and basically the gang's not really scared of him. And I've seen some people say, does it make sense? Does it not make sense? This is year 2 of Batman, to clarify. I think it makes sense that he is well known enough to strike fear into some, with other people not believing he's real. Also, this takes place on Halloween night, so you could also excuse that they could just think, oh, it's just some random in a bat suit, like it's not actually the Batman. So there's a couple of reasons why you could excuse them not being afraid. Like if this was like year 5 of Batman, then there's no fucking way no one's heard of the Batman at this point. Like Like, you would fucking. I mean, if you're smart, you would run away. But I mean, sometimes criminals aren't smart. But
Yeah.
no, so this one dude, he pulls out a fucking, like, machete. Um, the nostalgia critic looking
I
one.
think
He pulls out a
I think he
machete.
pulls out a baton more than a machete because the way it looks, it didn't. I think it was like very it was like a cylinder weapon, so I think it was more like a stake or like.
Nah, dude, it was not a cylinder. It had a handle. It was definitely a machete. So he's ready to like really hurt Batman, but Batman just disarms him, beats him up, knocks him out. That's it, done. And one point that I think was interesting is they said who are you supposed to be, and he responds with I'm vengeance. Now I thought that initially that was just like a offhand thing he said for the moment, but it seems like even though the news calls him the Batman, he calls himself Vengeance. So, because there's multiple people who call him Vengeance throughout the movie. So, I believe that in this universe, he's been saying that he's Vengeance, like he's the embodiment of vengeance. And doesn't really embrace the title of Batman. And I think that makes sense because if he were to call himself Batman, that doesn't seem like obviously we take it seriously because comics and you got to give a little leeway, but for this more gritty realistic look and for the character that is this version of Bruce Wayne, I would believe that he wouldn't call himself Batman initially.
I think why he calls himself Vengeance is not only to embody the trauma and driving force that drove him to become the Batman, but and then like every time people ask who he is, he calls himself Vengeance. Not only do I believe that he's telling others who like what he is embodying, but I think he's also reminding himself why he's doing what he's doing every night to beat up the criminals. So I think it's also like a mantra, you know?
Yeah. But so then the whole gang starts fighting him. And this is one of the fight scenes that I actually think is one of the best fight scenes in the movie. There are a few action scenes that I actually in hindsight have an issue with, but this is not one of them. They show him getting like they show him getting hit and him actually like he doesn't just tank the hits. Like he's like like he's like struggling with him, right? Like and then they show someone pull out a gun and like that's when it gets like real and like he basically is able to take everyone out but not without sustaining like a lot of hits. And the combat is really really good. Like great choreography, really good fight. And at the end, the guy that was about to get his ass beat, he looks at Batman and he's like, "Please don't hurt me." Like he's not like, "Thank you for saving me." He's also scared of Batman. So it's established that like Batman instills fear in everyone, not just the people that he fights. And that's when he gets the bat symbol. That's when he goes to the crime scene. So yeah, Wikipedia, fuck you for leaving that part out because that's like one of the. That's an amazing. I think that's the best entrance for a Batman ever. Like, I love the entrance of him in '89, and I love the entrance of him in Batman Begins. But this to me is such an impactful entrance for Batman, and it really sets the stage for what this character is gonna embody. Like amazing intro. Um, I was literally like smiling the whole time during that scene because I was like, this movie gets at least this part of Batman. I still had to wait to see what they did for the rest of the movie, but I was like, at least on a visual note, they get Batman,
Honestly, in
right?
my opinion, the intro for this movie is the best introduction to Batman ever. Like the way that's set up, the way it's like it changes from scene to scene, how they bring him into the scene, how he fought, and like just the whole environment and reactions within every scene. All of the intro to me just speaks volumes of what a Batman introduction should and always will be. And it's like it's
Yeah,
so like to me it's cinematic. Like genuinely it's cinematic in terms of a Batman uh story.
yeah. I can only hope that Superman gets the same treatment, and by that I don't mean a dark fucking movie. Like I want Boy Scout Superman, and I think that kind of think the world needs Boy Scout Superman now more than ever. They need like a symbol of hope. And yeah, Batman does become a symbol of hope, but like they're different types of hope. Superman is like going on a quick tangent here. Superman is supposed to be a symbol of hope for what man can become and what man should strive to be, right? But Batman is the hope of redemption. That's why that I made a thread of this on Twitter. The reason why Batman shouldn't kill, and if you're gonna have your Batman kill, you need to be consistent. So the reason why I have a problem with Batman killing in the Zack Snyder films is because if this is a Batman who kills, Joker shouldn't be alive. That's literally the bottom line. Especially when the implication is that the death of Robin by Joker's hand is what pushed him over the edge. There's no reason for Joker to be alive in that universe at all. So it's just not consistent. But aside from that, the reason why Batman doesn't kill is because he believes in redemption. He believes that not only Gotham can be redeemed, but that all criminals can be redeemed.
Yeah.
Even the most crazy
And then
ones.
another thing to point out is that the reason why his rule for not killing is so absolute is to not only as a hope for redemption, but also that line that you should never cross. So that line is the motivator to become it's like the motivator for redemption from going through a trauma like that, because to be able to kill, or like the act or thought process of wanting to kill someone, that's one of my favorite things about the character. He always makes sure like we can't kill, because if we kill, we'll be just like them. So once you cross that path, or you cross that line, then you just resort back to becoming the very thing that you sworn revenge for.
Yeah. That idea of redemption becomes important with the Riddler, but we'll get to that. So we get to oh shit. Okay, they left out quite a bit. So after the first investigation, Batman returns and we get to hear Something in the Way by Nirvana, which by the way, I have to say, I have known the song before because I have heard Nirvana's discography before, but I'm so happy that Something in the Way has got, like, I saw that it had a 1,200% increase in streams since the movie came out.
Oh shit.
Like, that song has a brand new life now. It was never released as a single. It was never a big Nirvana hit. It was just, it was in their biggest album, Nevermind. But it definitely wasn't a song that most people, mind you, I know some Nirvana heads will probably be like, oh, I knew the song. Yes, I know. I knew the song too. I'm just saying the average person probably didn't like know the song or had it at the forefront of their mind regarding Nirvana. But I'm really glad, and because it's such a beautiful and poignant song. And I'm really glad that it's gotten like a second life thanks to this movie. And it's used to great effect. Because the song is like, apparently when writing the script for this movie, Matt Reeves just had that song in his head. And the same thing with Robert Pattinson. He apparently used that song as a way, as like, he used that song as like a basis of the tone for his Batman. And apparently Paul Dano said he also used the song for his character as well. So this movie is very much tied to the Nirvana song. I wonder if the next movie will be tied to another Nirvana song, or if they'll move on to a different grunge band.
That'll be amazing, actually.
Hopefully, dude. What if? Oh my god. So the big three grunge bands. It's Nirvana. Well, I guess four: Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, Alice in Chains, and Pearl Jam. What if each Batman movie uses a deep cut from one of those bands? Like the next movie, we get a Stone Temple Pilots song.
I guess it depends on how they use the song that fits the movie.
If they want to use Something in the Way for the entire trilogy, it's a good song. I'm for it. Although I would like them, I don't want them to go Guardians of the Galaxy where there's like, not that I have a problem with that. I think Guardians of the Galaxy uses it in a good way, whereas Suicide Squad, the original one, uses it in a bad way. But I don't want them to just have like a million songs. I'm glad that there's only one pop song in this movie, and it's Something in the Way. To clarify, I mean pop as in the generic genre of popular music. Because when you break it down, the two classifications of music are classical and popular. So I'm not calling Nirvana pop. Don't get in arms about that. They're definitely not pop. But, now that I've explained what I mean by that, the only pop song used in this is Something in the Way, and it's used twice in the film, beginning and the end. And I really like that because it really does set the tone for the film. But he's on his way back to the Batcave, and when he gets there, one note that I like is that this is the first movie that acknowledges that, yes, Batman wears black makeup underneath the cowl. Um, it's I think it's a good touch. Yeah, some people make fun of the emo look, but I mean, at least it's like it's not shying away from the fact that literally every other Batman did the same thing. Michael Keaton, Christian Bale, Ben Affleck, they all wear black makeup under the mask so that way it can accentuate the eyes. Like, you either do that or you just put the white film over the eyes, which, I mean, you could do. But I like that they keep it consistent. Also, the thing about the long hair, the way I interpret I don't think he has long hair to be emo. My opinion is that this version of Batman, he just doesn't take care of himself. Like, he gets maybe a haircut once a year, and then that's it. He doesn't care about his appearance. That's what my interpretation of the long hair is. I don't think he has long hair to look emo. I don't think he cares about appearances at all in the first place. But Alfred shows up, which we don't get much of Alfred. Some people complain they wanted more, and I think that's a good sign, because I also wanted more, but I was okay with the amount that we got. I think we got the amount that we needed. Considering how long this movie is, there are a few scenes that I would cut from this movie, and I'll get to those. But for the most part, I think this movie runs along pretty well for its 3-hour length time. To be exact, the movie's 176 minutes, based on what I'm seeing here. But yeah, roughly 3 hours. So he gets there. One cool gadget he apparently has is he has camera contact lenses that capture everything he sees and hears. So he's going through that footage to figure out the Riddler's scheme. Alfred gets there, and Alfred's basically complaining how, the accountants are there and they really need to talk to him. But, Bruce Wayne doesn't care about that. He says, like, the Batman is his father's legacy. Like, he doesn't care about the Wayne family name because that's not going to help him on his mission, right? And I think this is an important part of the film. This scene's actually super important because a lot of people are complaining that this version of Batman doesn't have the Blake Boy persona. He's just Batman the whole time. That's literally the point of the movie. At this point, we're 2 years into Batman's career. This is clearly a Batman that is deeply affected, as all Batmen are. He's deeply affected by the loss of his parents, and he feels the best way to honor their death is to become the Batman to fight the corruption that seeps through Gotham City. Not understanding the use of Bruce Wayne, not understanding the use of, any other avenue. He thinks the only way is as Batman. And that's something that does change. That's part of his character arc. So when people are complaining that, he doesn't act like playboy philanthropist Bruce Wayne, it's because that's not where he's at emotionally yet. That's the point of the arc. Critical Drinker pointed this out as a complaint, along with the complaint that Robert Pattinson's performance was very, very bland. And I just do not understand it. I think Robert Pattinson does an amazing job acting, especially since this is a movie that mostly takes place with him being Batman, which means he has to wear the cowl, which means his facial expressions are very limited, and he does a very good job. And as for the character, one thing that was confusing to me, here's an interesting thing. One thing that was confusing to me was one of the complaints of him being just this version of Bruce Wayne, not being a playboy Bruce Wayne, was to him. The guy, I don't remember who said it because I watched a lot of reviews. This person said that I feel like they don't do anything new with the character of Bruce Wayne. But your complaint is that you want him to be the playboy philanthropist, which we've gotten in every single version of Bruce Wayne in live action. So what did you want to be new that isn't the thing that you thought he should be that's been done before? You get what I'm saying? Like, it's a very contradictory complaint.
So the thing about Bruce Wayne is that that's the common complaint, is that he doesn't act like the millionaire and charming philanthropist that people are used to seeing him. But the thing about this Bruce Wayne is that he his parents were taken away from him at a very young age, and his parents didn't teach him how to become a Wayne. So he he basically got his childhood taken away from him at a very young age, and he doesn't know how to act like a Wayne. So he's been very moody, very emo, and kind of antisocial. Well, actually, no, not very antisocial, and he kind of keeps to himself, even from Alfred. So I think that complaint about Bruce Wayne is invalid in terms of how it should be, because this is a version of Bruce Wayne that feels very new, very fresh, and I say it's as new as Year One, which, by the way, that's one of the comics that influenced the film, along with The Long Halloween and Ego. So, in Year
Yeah,
One,
Ego. Also, Robert Pattinson said that fuck, what was the name of the comic? He said that there was a different comic that he used to also uh that he used as a basis.
which I've never actually read the comic, it's called Batman Shaman.
Yeah, that's it. Shaman. The art looks interesting. I've never read it though.
Yeah, me neither. So I probably will read it afterwards.
So I actually respect that they went for some really deep cuts, honestly.
Yeah, I think Matt Reeves kind of did his research and told them what comics to read, and maybe some of them, I don't know if it's just Robert Pattinson or the rest of the cast, they actually did research themselves, and that's how Pattinson discovered Shaman, and he used
Apparently
that.
there's going to be a deluxe edition of the physical release that includes the comics that inspired the movie.
What? Oh my god.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. So I kind of want to put money down for that, honestly.
Dude, same. I'm gonna. If it's a steel, well, I doubt it's a steel box. It could be a steel box with the comics. If it is,
I'll look it up. I'll look it up. You can continue on with your point. I'll look it up in the meantime.
oh my, yeah. But for Bruce Wayne, so aside from being emo, I think it fits perfectly with how he's depicted in the movie. And a little side note, so whenever he changes, like Bruce Wayne changes into the Batman costume, in the scene, like in the scenes where he's just prowling around in the city, or he's just like just out and about, just observing his environment, he actually wears super baggy clothes, and that's his incognito outfit. So whenever he sees a crime happening, or if he needs to go in as Batman, he can kind of like take himself out of the environment or the area and go into like an alleyway or like an empty cart in the metro rail, and he actually puts on the eyeliner around his eyes, and he takes away like the costume and changes into the batsuit, which I honestly think that's something we've never seen in previous films, where he dresses up in like civilian clothes, which is like baggy, like a baggy pants and baggy jacket with hat, and he kind of like we see him actually change into the Batman costume, and I think that's super awesome, and it's like incredible to even include that on top of the eyeliner. So there's just many things about Bruce Wayne and the Batman that are very close to the comics that translate well into the movie. So it's him changing, him putting on eyeliner. Um, Also, Alfred is surprisingly young in this film, because in previous films we see him to be older, and they cast Andy Serkis as Alfred, and I think it's weird because they also cast someone young to be Aunt May for the MCU Spider-Man films, which I don't know if
Well, I think Andy Serkis just looks young. He's 57 years old. And I think Bruce Wayne in this movie is like 27. So there's like 30 years apart from them.
but same thing with Aunt May. I think the actress who plays Aunt May, she's in her 50s too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's in her 50s as well.
Yeah.
Although Aunt May, to me, Aunt May is always to me she in the comics she's always been in her 80s. But I didn't mind them making her younger because I mean she was a good Aunt May, so I mean it's fine. But this Andy Serkis, I've always thought Alfred, while being old, I never thought he was like super old. That's why like when he's in the Dark Knight Returns, it didn't bother me that he was still around because I was like, well, if Batman's 55, then I guess Alfred's like 85 years old. So it's not that crazy that he's still alive.
Right.
Um, but no, yeah, he does. I This version of Alfred is younger than like the Michael Caine version. Um, Although I guess he's kind of similar to the version from Batman v Superman, because that version of Alfred's not that old.
I guess he's like a little bit older than Andy Serkis Alfred, but probably by like a decade. I don't know. Well, actually, I don't know how old that actor is in Batman v Superman, but I guess like if this movie didn't happen, he probably would have been the youngest iteration of Alfred.
Yeah. I looked it up. So the box set, it's not a movie box set. It's just a box set of the comics, and it includes The Long Halloween, Batman Ego and Other Tales, and which is spelled Tails. Interesting. And Batman Year One. So these are the comics that inspired it, but it doesn't have the movie with it, which is fine. It costs like $56 on Amazon.
That's actually not bad compared to having like a box set of 3 comics for only 57.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I recently watched The Long Halloween, the animated movie, part one and two. Very good animated movie. I highly suggest watching it.
Yeah, if you haven't read the comics but you want to get into the story before watching this movie, I would suggest watching The Long Halloween and Year One. So like all the Batman films are on HBO Max. So if you do or you don't, if you do, it'll be easy access because you have.
Is Batman Year One good? Because I heard the voice for Batman isn't that good in it.
Um, I mean, I'm fine with it. It does kind of like intrude every once in a while, but like
Like people say that he sounds like emotionless. I did hear that Bryan Cranston does play Gordon, which I can imagine is amazing. So I guess that makes up for it.
yeah, honestly, like I think the guy who voices Batman in that film, I don't know his name, but he's an actor from the Supernatural TV show. He's the guy with the
Mm.
short hair, not the long hair. But he's the voice actor for Batman in Year One. At least no, fuck. No, it's not him. It's it's the actor who plays Commissioner Gordon in the Gotham TV series. He's the one that voices Batman.
Interesting. Very interesting. But anyways, so let's get on track again. Okay, so we're here now. Now we're up to date with the actual movie, unlike Wikipedia. So Batman and Gordon discover that the Riddler left a thumb drive, which that's another great joke. That's another great joke. Is like he finds like so he basically with Alfred's help he finds out that the riddle is drive. Um, so he goes to Mitchell's parking lot and finds that there's a car with, I guess it's like a cutting tool. I don't know exactly what tool it is, but it's in the tire. He pulls it out. They open the car, and where the USB port would be, they find a thumb drive with Mitchell's detached thumb on it. And that scene was like it was very like dry, but it was funny. Like I think the whole theater laughed at that one. Um, so at that point, they basically so Mitchell's containing images of Mitchell with a woman. So yeah, they gotta take it to the laptop, which in order to activate the USB, you need to use the imprint of the severed thumb. Uh, um, so Annika Kozlov is the woman that Mitchell's with at the Iceberg Lounge, a nightclub operated by the Penguin, mobster Carmine Falcone's lieutenant. By the way, I noticed that in this movie they pronounced his name Falcone instead of Falcone. Um, I think Falcone is actually the accurate pronunciation of that name. Falcone, I think you would need an I at the end of it to pronounce it that way, wouldn't you? Like if it's Italian.
I don't
I don't
know.
speak Italian. I might be wrong, But typically they pronounce his name Falcone. In this movie, they pronounced it Falcone. I think the reason they did that was to match with a later riddle. But we'll get to that. While the Penguin pleads ignorance, Batman notices Selina Kyle, Annika's roommate, works at the club as a waitress. Batman follows Selina home to question Annika, but the latter soon disappears, so he sends Selina back to the Iceberg Lounge to search for answers. Through Selina, Batman discovers that Savage was on Falcone's payroll. As is District Attorney Gil Colson, Selina shuts off communication when Batman presses her about her relationship with Falcone. So, at this point, there's, again, I'll fill in the blanks here. So, the Penguin in this movie is amazing. It's the best Penguin we've ever gotten. And I like Danny DeVito's Penguin, actually. But this is easily the best version of the Penguin that we've ever gotten on screen. Played by Colin Farrell. If you haven't seen it, look up an image of Colin Farrell and look up an image of the Penguin in this movie. Like, it's amazing. I've heard a complaint that... I think it was Critical Drinker who had this complaint. Maybe it was someone else, but I think it was Critical Drinker, who basically said, if you're gonna put that amount of makeup on him, why not cast someone else instead of the Penguin? I mean, instead of Colin Farrell. And I just think that's like, sure, but if Colin Farrell gave an amazing performance, and if during casting, Colin Farrell was the best choice for the role, then why would you give up the best choice just because he doesn't look the part, right? Like, that's the thing is, like, I never have a problem when, like, for example, Gordon here is played by
Jeffrey Wright,
who's black. Gordon's typically white. I don't have a problem with Jeffrey Wright playing him because he plays a good Gordon.
And same thing with Catwoman. She's played by Zoe Kravitz, which is also black.
Yeah, and Catwoman's not typically black. I don't have a problem, although in the 60s, one of the Catwomen was black. But the voice of Yzma, actually, funny enough, from Emperor's New Groove. She played one of the Catwomen from the 60s. But yeah, I don't have a problem with race swapping, so long as the actor does a good enough job to justify the race swap. Like, if you race swap and the actor does a terrible job, then I'm very cynical when it comes to Hollywood. So if you race swap and the actor does a terrible job, then I'm led to believe that you race swapped just to race swap. But if you race swap and they do an amazing job, then that leads me to believe you just cast the person who is best for the performance. That's the way I look at it, at least. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I mean, I agree. The thing, it could be, well, we're probably going to go into very controversial, but in terms of race swapping, I'm kind of iffy and pick and choose on the reason why. Like, I agree that I don't mind if a character is race swapped, not just for like people of color, for like African Americans, but also like Asian, Hispanic, or even, that's another thing, we don't see enough of Native American actors. But if you race swap a character who's originally white, I don't mind it as long as they do the character justice. They portray the character well, like straight out of the source material, and the actual like color of their skin does not infringe on the performance and the background.
Yeah, like, obviously there are exceptions to this. Certain characters have to be a certain race. Like, for example, Black Panther needs to be black, at least for the traditional version of Black Panther. If you did a version of Black Panther where he was a white child adopted by a Wakandan parents, that would obviously change the story, and that would make this Black Panther white. But, I mean, first of all, I don't know. If you're writing a story, I kind of feel like you're going out of your way to make Black Panther white at that point. Like, there's just certain characters that their race is tied to their character. But, like, the same way looks-wise. Like, okay, Tobey Maguire wasn't a bodybuilder when they casted him for Spider-Man. But he did the work and got buff as fuck. Like, that to me, saying, oh, why don't they just hire someone that looks like that, is the same thing as saying, well, why don't they just hire a buff guy to play a superhero? It's like, you hire who's good for the job. If Colin Farrell was good for the job, and he was, clearly, based on his performance here, then why not cast him and just cover it up with prosthetics. And I love that, like, because some other studio would have probably just used CGI. They actually put the effort to do the prosthetics and the makeup, and it's so good. And I believe that the like the makeup, is actually in parts, and that's why he's able to emote with his face really well. Because, like, I believe I saw an interview where they explained that the way the makeup worked was that it was basically tailored to like all the facial muscles that would be required to like move the eyebrows and the cheekbones and this and that. So
Which I also want
he
to
does.
point out is that there's very little, as pointed out by Matt Reeves, there's so minimal CGI usage in this movie that most of the effects in the cinematography in the scenes, they're either practical or they're natural lighting, which I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good, like visually, the movie. Um, but again, the point of like, oh, there's no comedy, bro. Batman shows up to the Penguin Lounge at the front door. He doesn't sneak in like traditional Batman would, like, which I think is a point in. I think this is like important. Like, obviously, it's a dumb idea to go through the front door, but this is like kind of showing progression for his character for later on in the movie. So he opens the door and this dude opens the door and he's like, and Batman's like, "Oh, do you know who I am?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I got an idea." And then he's like, "I want to see the Penguin." And then he closes the door, comes back with the twin, and they basically like, "Okay, you got to get out of here." And Batman just beats the fuck out of them. He goes into the Iceberg Lounge, starts beating the crap out of all the other people there. Not the civilians, obviously, but the guards there. And then Penguin shows up, and again, people that are saying there's no humor in this movie, I question if you watched the movie, because the Penguin is like the biggest source of comedy in this whole movie. Like, he's hilarious. He just shows up. He's like, take it easy, sweetheart. And he's like,
I think
like,
what a lot of people are confused as what they interpret as a joke, because what they find funny is like the jokes they
yeah.
tell in
If you don't
Marvel.
find it funny, that's fine. If you don't find the jokes funny, that's fine. But it's very clear that the Penguin is like kind of the comic relief of the movie.
Yeah, because like he acts like a typical like mobster, like not in real life, but like the classical trope of a mobster from back in the day. And I think it works well with his character.
Yeah, because you kind of get the idea, and maybe this is not intentional, maybe this is me reading into it. You kind of get the idea that he's acting like not the actor, but the character, not the actor, but the character is kind of acting like a stereotypical mobster because that's what he wants. He wants to be a big time, like, gangman. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I feel like he's overacting, not the actor, because there are times where he gets serious, but for the most part, I feel like he's kind of putting it up. And you also notice, I don't know if anyone noticed this, but he's actually wearing heels, so they do point out that the Penguin is short. Uh, also, his face is fucked up, dude.
I think the scars on his face could be something he got from his childhood. And you also notice he limps in this movie too. So he
Yeah,
walks like a penguin too.
so that way he can waddle. People only really noticed the waddle when he got tied up later on, which we'll get to. But I noticed that he limped throughout the movie, so I think that it wasn't just that scene. I think he just has a perpetual waddle because, I mean, he's the Penguin. Um, but no, I love the Penguin in this. And then we also got introduced to Selena Kyle in this, which Zoe Kravitz. When I initially watched it, I wasn't sure on her performance, and there is a scene or two where I think her acting, I think they could have done another take. But for the most part, she does actually a great job. I still prefer very slightly, like it's really close to me. I still prefer slightly Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, but this is really close, very very close second as to my favorite live action Batwoman. Um,
Yeah, honestly, I think she's probably the second, if not on par with Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, because she did, dude. Like, I think I appreciate Zoe Kravitz more because when I first saw this casting, I was pleasantly surprised, and then when I see her portrayal in the movie, I just thought to myself, I finally get an accurate Catwoman from the comics. Like she
Yeah.
looks and feels and acts like Catwoman.
Yeah, she does a really good job. I saw some people complain about her I think it's called a baklava. It's the little mask she wears. Let me look it up.
You mean that little beanie mask that she has?
Yeah, it's called a balaclava. Yeah, it's a balaclava. Some people complain like, "Oh, I they put the little pointy ears so that way she can have ears." You know what? Fair enough. That it kind of looks a little silly. But I mean, well, one thing someone said is, "Oh, this version of her is like a stripper, so she actually should have a cat like mask lying around." And I just was like, "I guess that's fair. Yeah, she should." Um, but I didn't. She doesn't wear it for most of the movie, so I didn't have a big problem with it. Um, but basically, on the first conference, some people. I got so annoyed with someone that I was arguing with in a Discord server, where they were like, "Oh, yeah, Batman gets saved by Catwoman at the end. Yeah, and Batman saves Catwoman like 3 times throughout the movie. In their first confrontation, she doesn't beat him in a fight, nor should she. The dude's in a fucking armored suit. Even if they were equal in terms of strength and combat, he just like just equipment wise, he outmatches her. So yeah, in their first confrontation, he beats her, and he decides that they're gonna help each other. Well, more so that she's gonna help him. Um, puts on the contacts for her and sends her off to the Iceberg Lounge. She finds this is basically the scene where we find out that almost everyone in power is corrupt, and she also finds out that something has happened to her friend Annika.
Well, she kind of finds a lead because she already knows that something happened when they went back to the apartment. But I think
Yeah,
when she stumbles upon the DA, which is they're all located with like in the club within the club of the Iceberg Lounge. I think it's called something 44. But she finds the DA and then he kind of opens up to her because she's being seductive, and that's
yeah, and he's drunk and on drops.
right.
By the way, drops is the main drug in this movie. It's basically like a eye drop um drug. I don't know how it works. They don't really explain it. It's not really important.
Right. I
Um
I think that the drops could indicate a Batman villain. We don't know if it's Scarecrow or the Mad Hatter or someone else or maybe a new character, but I think there could be a connection that might be established in the future with
based on the logo itself, I could see it be Scarecrow, but like I don't know why I don't think Scarecrow would make like an ecstasy type of drug. I figure he'd make more like a hallucinogenic type of drug.
or it could be a mix between the both.
But either way, like I don't think he would make something that, because the thing about Scarecrow is like he's obsessed with fear, like not like Batman, but he's obsessed with using fear. So maybe Mad Hatter. But Mad Hatter doesn't really use. Mad Hatter uses technology more than he uses drugs, right?
I mean,
Like he usually creates like masks or hats that control his victims, doesn't he?
in other mediums, he's a very practical person, so he does dress up and he kind of actually role plays his fantasies of Alice in Wonderland characters.
Yeah, he's always trying to find his
But
Alice.
the
I
way
think he like
but the way I can find the excuse for this one is that he could incorporate a drug of of ecstasy or some type to feel like you are down the rabbit hole. So it could be a new iteration where he can mix practicality with something more.
well, that's the thing. The drops don't make you hallucinate; they just make you high.
No, no, I'm saying like the drug makes you high, but it could be a new drug that kind of, well, it's not really explored, so I don't know. I'm just theorizing that it's a drug that makes you high, and maybe it's something that
Yeah,
could be
like
branded with Alice in Wonderland.
I think based on the way they represent it, I think drops are supposed to be like akin to heroin, because they like, oh, like rich people do heroin, and then all the drug addicts in the orphanage are apparently drop heads, and usually those are homeless people also get addicted to heroin as well. But but yeah, I don't know. I don't think the drops are connected to any villain in particular. I think it's just a drug in the universe. Though there are drugs that we will see later on that are connected potentially.
I'm
Um,
probably just reading into it too much, but if it were connected, I'm just wondering who it's connected to. If not, then it's not a big deal for me.
yeah, I mean, it's obviously left open ended so that way you can theorize who it is. I'm not sure who it would be though. Um, so yeah, basically that whole scene happens, and then the Riddler abducts Coulson, straps a timed collar bomb to his neck, and sends him to interrupt Mitchell's funeral. When Batman arrives, the Riddler calls him via Coulson's phone and threatens to detonate the bomb. If Coulson cannot answer 3 riddles, Batman helps Coulson answer the first 2, but Coulson refuses to answer the third, the name of the informant who gave the GCPD information that led to the historic drug bust ending mobster Sal Maroni's operation, and dies. Batman and Gordon deduce that the informant may be the Penguin and track him to a drug deal. They discover Maroni's operation transferred to Falcone, with many GCPD officers involved. Selina inadvertently exposes them when she arrives to steal money. As the Penguin flees, Selina discovers Annika's corpse in a car trunk. Batman captures the Penguin but learns that he was not the informant. So, the scene leading up to Batman interrogating Coulson with the bomb strapped to his neck, we see Bruce Wayne shows up to the funeral, and the reason he shows up isn't because isn't for his Bruce Wayne persona. It's still for Batman. He goes to the funeral because he believes that Riddler would be there. Um, and you get a few different things. You get the new mayor, or the woman running for mayor. She shows up and she's like, "No one can seem to get a hold of you, Bruce. Your parents were known for their philanthropy, and you're not really doing anything like that. I think you should be putting your money to use." And Bruce kind of like, he doesn't really respond to it. He's just kind of whatever about it. And he notices again. They point at the kid, the son of the mayor, and he focuses on him again. And that's when you start hearing like screams from the outside, and that's when a car rams through, and Bruce Wayne saves the kid. And that's when Coulson comes out with the strap around his neck. And this is very, he has a letter to his chest that says, to the Batman. Batman shows up later in the day, and yeah, they basically, just like it's described here in the Wikipedia thing, they kind of go through the riddles. One thing Coulson points out is like, if he gives out the name of the informant, they're going to go after his family. They're going to go after his kid. So he lets himself die rather than answer the 3rd riddle. This is also the first time the Riddler and Batman directly get to speak to each other, although they get interrupted by Coulson crying. Um, one thing that I think is like a smaller issue, but is something that I think a lot of people have noticed at this point. I've also seen it twice, and when I saw it with my friend Xavier, that was like the first thing he noticed. Like, he was like, he basically, when the bomb goes off, Batman is like right in front of it, and he doesn't take any damage to his face at all. Like, he gets knocked out, but he doesn't take any physical damage to his face.
Which, after the second viewing, I've noticed that when he flies backwards from like the explosion, he had his arms actually covering his face. So I think he could have reduced the impact on his face, but I kind of agree in that I would wish we saw
Well,
like some
the thing
scratches.
is like, the thing is like, when he's flying backwards, yeah, his arms are up because he's getting flung across the room. But when he's right in front of the bomb, he didn't put his arms up. The bomb blew up with his, like, because he was like trying to talk to the Riddler or Coulson or whoever. So the thing is like, the problem with that is, even if he did put his arms up, I still don't believe that it would do anything, because what happened to we'll get to it in detail, but what happened later on when a bomb went off in front of Alfred? He actually threw the bomb, so he was actually further away from the bomb when it blew up, and he got all sorts of cuts and damage to his face.
No, I'm just saying that that I agree. Like we should have seen some type of injury on his face, or
I'm not
like
saying his face should have been scarred like permanently, but at the very least he should have had like, burns or like just some shrapnel in his face.
yeah, exactly. Like it would have been shrapnel to be like around his face or like his upper body. Which also I want to point out that I don't know if it's Critical Drinker who said this or another reviewer, but they also complained that like why was he still standing there when the bomb was about to explode, which like he could have just run away. Which I want to point
I
out
mean,
like why like
he was distracted. He was trying to get information off Coulson. He wasn't paying attention to the bomb.
I know. I'm what I'm pointing out is that they're complaining that he should have just run away when the bomb was about to explode, but like he was so absorbed into the situation and he was trying to
Yeah.
save him. Why what reason would he want to run away from the guy? Like even as he said it, there was a line in the movie that says, "I don't care what happens to me," which implies that he's willing to kill himself for his.
Well, I think he's willing to die, but I don't think he would want, like, if he noticed it was gonna go off, I think he would have jumped out of the way, because he doesn't want to die before he solves the riddle, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I also like I just think that like him running away, I still wouldn't think he would run away. At least like kind of like jump away, but not like, oh, I need to like run away as far away from this guy as possible, kind of deal. But it's also the scene where he was so absorbed into solving the riddle that he kind of just like like he kind of panicked at the very last second, and he's like, oh shit, it's about to explode. I better like just jump, you know?
Yeah. Like, I think there are some scenes here where I'm like it doesn't really make sense, and they kind of sacrificed logic for a cool shot. I think this is one of those examples where rather than have Batman notice and jump out of the way, they wanted a cool shot of Batman getting blown up, so they distracted Batman. But I mean, it's reasonable. It's reasonable that he got distracted. But another example of that is actually going to come up with so they're trying to figure out the riddle, and they think that the Penguin, because it's the El Rata. What is it? El Rata. What?
El Rata Lata.
El Rata Alada. Um, which is terrible Spanish.
Which also the Penguin pointed that out, how he
Yeah.
actually corrected Gordon
because
and
I don't know.
Batman.
I don't know Spanish, so I didn't even notice until Penguin pointed it out. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't even know that was bad Spanish. um, but I mean, we're gonna get to that very soon. Um, so they basically figure out which El Rata Alada means basically a rat with wings, which is slang for a pigeon. So they're trying to figure out, okay, what's a pigeon? When I watched the movie, the first thought I thought of was like, okay, maybe it's a bat instead of a pigeon, right?
That was the first thing I thought of. Like, what if they're referring to the Batman and not necessarily everyone else?
Yeah. But they think of the penguin because a penguin has wings. So they hunt down the penguin. They go to the whole drug thing, the drug deal. Catwoman ends up being there as well, and she's trying to steal money from the penguin. However, in one of the bags actually is a body bag, not a money bag. Now, this is actually something that I realized is actually an issue with the film, and I don't think there's an explanation. There's no real explanation for it, so this is just going to be a flaw with the film. There's no reason they should have that body, considering it's been like a day or two since she's gone missing. Like that like you've seen a million mobster movies, and just logically, first of all, if you didn't get rid of the body, why would you take the body with you on a drug deal? Like, why wouldn't you leave the body somewhere that no one can find, right? Like, there's a lot of ways to get rid of bodies. Uh, don't attack me, FBI. I'm just speaking from movie experience. I don't actually know firsthand. But there's a lot of ways that you can get rid of bodies. You can throw it, like if there's a construction site, you can throw it into the cement and let the body be buried within the cement. If you can throw it in the ocean, you can burn it in a furnace. Like there's lots of ways that in movies they've shown that you can get rid of bodies, and I'm pretty sure that are also documented as ways that bodies have been like disposed of before. So there's no reason that, because this is like 2 nights, because the first night that she goes missing, and then the next day is the thing with, yeah, this is like the second night since she's been missing. That body should have gotten rid of by then. So that's kind of a flaw with the movie.
The
Um,
one excuse I can think of is that maybe they were transferring the body to be dumped elsewhere. So it'll be like they killed her, they had her in like
but that
location
wouldn't
A.
still explain why it's with them at the drug deal.
No, I know. I'm saying that's an excuse I could think of, but that's I agree. It's a flaw that they should have disposed of it beforehand.
They obviously needed it to be so that Catwoman finds the body, so that way she knows that she's dead. I think a better way of doing that would have established that there's like a necklace or something really important to Annika that she always wears, and have it be left in the car with blood on it. That would be the best way to show, yeah, she's probably dead. Um, Obviously that doesn't confirm her death to Catwoman, but believe that if Catwoman found that and then she finds the phone later on, that basically confirms to her that she's dead without needing to kind of do this thing where it doesn't really make sense. But Penguin notices and he starts shooting at them, and Batman gets knocked out from this for some reason. I don't really understand why he gets knocked out, because he gets shot with like a with a fully automatic weapon, right? Which is obviously more powerful than a pistol, so that's fine that he would get knocked out with it. The problem I have with it is that later on in the movie, he totally tanks fully automatic weapons. So I don't understand why he gets knocked out here. Maybe he's playing dead. That's me giving the movie a little bit of leeway, but I'm gonna give it the leeway because it follows up with a really cool scene. Now, a complaint I saw, and I'm gonna give benefit of the doubt to the reviewers who said this. They said that it was out of character for Batman to chase the Penguin and leave behind Gordon, where Gordon could have gotten killed by all those people. But what they didn't notice is that basically by the time Batman is going to chase the Penguin, the other mobsters have already dispersed to get the money, and Gordon is already back at his car, so he's safe. So I don't think they noticed that happened. So if I'm sure if they watch it again, they would notice that. So that's a complaint I heard about the movie. Doesn't really apply because Gordon's already safe by the time Batman's about to chase the Penguin. But then we get the chase scene, which is so fucking cool. It's like, I think this is the best Batmobile, honestly.
Wait. So I want to add. So right before they start the chase scene, um, well, Batman disappears to go to the Batmobile, but Penguin kind of turns the corner to find Catwoman, and then he turns around to hear like a car starting, and then he stares like into like a dark alleyway that's I think next to the warehouse where they were raiding. But oh my god, this is like the best introduction to a Batmobile ever. Like the way the scene was set up, like Penguin just staring at the Batmobile as if it's like deer in the headlights. He's so frozen in fear and like intimidation, and like the way that the Batmobile, it's literally personified to be like like a movie monster. It's like in a dark alleyway. It's revving up its engines. It's like the way I describe it, it's like a bat out of hell, literally. So the fucking car just revs up, and it's like so monstrous, so scary, and it's something out of a horror movie too. And
Yeah, I do wonder, because you notice that it kind of false starts. Some people have said maybe that's him false starting to scare Penguin. I thought, when I first saw it, what I thought was that the engine actually failed on him because it's his first time using the Batmobile.
that could be, yeah.
I think you can take it either way. I don't know what the intent was. Um, but yeah, the penguin chase scene is so fucking good, like so intense. So yeah, this is an awesome chase scene. And it's mostly practical. There is some CGI stuff, like I'm pretty sure when the big cylinder construction thing crashes into the Batmobile, I'm pretty sure that's not real, because I think that would stop a real car. But for the most part, it's all practical. The only part is that, and also, so this is kind of a big convenience, that they make so that way they can get the cool shot. When the trucks are all crashing, they luckily, this isn't an impossibility, but they luckily form into a ramp for Batman to go and launch through the fire. Um, I honestly think that's kind of a stretch, but you know, it's not. It doesn't like ruin the plot or anything. If they didn't do that, then Batman would just go straight through them, right?
I think
Like,
honestly, it's like a comic book logic, which it's like this, for example. Like it's realistically it's improbable, but it's incredibly a coincidental moment for you to get a cool shot in the film.
yeah, like some people said that when like the difference I would say
It's like a comic book logic where like realistically it wouldn't happen. Like where were the chances of that actually happening? But
yeah, like another example would be when the Penguin gets hit by Batman and his car flips like 6 times. It's very unlikely that most people would survive that without at least getting knocked out. Um, but give it a little leeway. Also, remember to wear your seatbelt. Penguin wears a seatbelt in that scene. Wear your seatbelt, kids, because if not, when Batman chases you down, you will be turned into jelly by that car crash.
I'm surprised he didn't get head trauma.
Yeah, he should have been like bleeding from his head at least. Like that's another example where like they kind of I just don't think that they thought of it when they were doing the scene, honestly. But he should have been like, even if he didn't get knocked out, he should have been fucking bleeding from his head. um but that scene is so great, like when the explosion happens and Penguin's like, ah, I got you, psycho, I got you, and then fucking Batman just comes in. Some people, I saw a criticism where, oh, Batman should have gone and out to help the people in the car, and it's like, I guess, I don't know. Um,
I
does Batman like basically you have to kind of weigh this thing out. It's the same way where like, oh, Batman can't stop every crime. It's like, yeah, should he go to save those people? Yes, but if he lets the Penguin go, he would lose his lead. What he believes is his lead. We know that it's not the case. That Penguin's actually not a lead at all. But what he believes to be his lead, he loses that, which then puts more people at risk under the Riddler. So you kind of have to weigh your options at that point.
plus people keep forgetting that this is an inexperienced Batman, which he already has a priority straight. Like at the time, which is chasing after his leads and going after criminals. So in terms of like civilian life, he kind of has to pick and choose on like, should I stay behind and save people, or should I be bloodthirsty and chase after my only lead? You know?
Yeah. Like you gotta weigh, like even I think even an experienced Batman would like really weigh his options at that point. Is like, okay, yeah, I gotta make sure these people get help. I think what Batman would do rather than get help is he would use the computer in his Batmobile to call an ambulance, so that way he can still give chase while making sure that these people get help.
Yeah, but I think that would suit better for the older Batman, probably like the third or I say like fourth or
Yeah, like,
fifth year.
well, the thing is, like, I don't think this version of the Batmobile has that kind of computer in it yet, because I'm pretty certain this is his first time using the Batmobile, because they show throughout earlier scenes in the movie pieces of the Batmobile, which means he's kind of in the middle of constructing it. Um, so yeah, this is also like an earlier Batmobile.
Yeah, so I think the complaints about like he should have done this, he should have done that, but you gotta remember he's still learning. He's experienced. He doesn't have the technology or the
Yeah,
mentality that you
I
would
will say,
expect from Batman.
if he did have the technology in his Batmobile to call the hospital, like to call an ambulance, I would have expected him to be like, computer, call an ambulance. Like, just because that doesn't take any time at all. It's just computer, call the ambulance. Like, you just heard me say it in like less than 5 seconds.
Well,
So
I think he could have also just like had a number there and just do a speed dial thing for 911, but at the same time, he's not thinking about that. He's like he has tunnel vision. You get me?
yeah, but we'll see with like future movies. Anyways, they grab Penguin, and again, here's another example of some comic relief because they're trying to interrogate the Penguin, and he's just like that when Gordon's trying to show him like the picture of Pete Savage's like face. He's like, what are you showing me? Come on. And it's like, no. I don't know. How do you not find that funny?
No,
like, that's such a good scene.
I think what he said was like when Gordon showed him the picture, Penguin was like, don't show me that. What the hell? Why are you? I want to see this.
Yeah. But then Gordon's like, open your eyes.
Open your eyes. Oh my god. I thought that was like the funniest scene in the movie.
Yeah. He's like, does El Rata Alada mean anything to you? And he's like, El Rata Alada? Yeah. It's the worst Spanish I ever heard in my life. It's la. You two never learned Spanish before. And
it's like it's URL El Rata Alada.
Yeah, I will say, this version of Batman, I will give the excuse that he is younger, but I mean, typically Batman knows like every language, and I feel like he would at least know Spanish. But whatever, it's not a big deal. Because Spanish is like, isn't it like the second most spoken language in America?
I don't know the statistics for that, but I'm assuming it is because, well, we're from Miami, so the primary language is Spanish. But
top 10 most spoken languages in the U.S.: English, Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, which is Filipino, Vietnamese, French, Arabic, and Korean. So yeah, Spanish would be like number 2. So I would believe that even if he wasn't Batman, he should know Spanish because, I mean, he's a rich kid and he has, like, rich, education. But whatever, let that pass. Not a big deal, just a quick little thing I'm pointing at, you know what I mean? So they basically figure out that it's not you are El Rata Alada. It's URL.
Yeah,
Rata Alada.
Yeah, it's a URL.
It's a URL. So they go to the website. It takes them to this chat log directly to the Riddler, and they talk for a bit. And he's like, "Oh, is it the Penguin?" And the Riddler's like, "That's interesting, but you're missing the bigger picture." So he tells him to go to the orphanage, that was built by the Waynes. And so back to the Wikipedia here. Batman and Gordon follow the Riddler's trail to the ruins of an orphanage funded by Bruce's murdered parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne. When they learn that the Riddler holds a grudge against the Wayne family, Bruce Butler and caretaker Alfred Pennyworth is hospitalized after opening a letter bomb addressed to Bruce. The Riddler then leaks evidence that Thomas, who was running for mayor before he was murdered, hired Falcone to kill a journalist for threatening to reveal embarrassing details about Martha's history of mental illness. Bruce, who grew up believing his father was a morally upstanding, confronts Alfred, who confirms the allegations but maintains that Thomas only asked Falcone to threaten the journalist into silence and planned to turn Falcone over to police once he found out the journalist was murdered. Alfred believes that Falcone had Thomas and Martha killed to prevent this. So, this is actually probably the best emotional scene in the movie, in my opinion. But before we get to that, another little fun joke, and this one's clearly a joke, is when Batman says no guns, and Gordon's like, "Hey, man, that's your thing." Because, of course, like, Gordon is not a super trained armor-wearing man. Like, he's just a normal guy. Like, of course he's going to want a gun for self-defense. Like, so that's a good little joke. Now, this is, like, a big point in the movie, finding out that the Riddler has a grudge on Bruce. Because when that letter is found by Batman, it says, "See you in hell." And I think that's the first time we get the seeds planted that Riddler supposedly knows that Batman is Bruce. Now, I loved seeing the desperation in Batman trying to get to Wayne Tower to save Alfred, only to find out that it was too late. Um, and then that's in that meantime, he goes to confront Falcone himself and get answers. I will say Bruce was a little too believing of Falcone, a mob boss, but he was also very emotionally compromised. Alfred, the only person he has left in the hospital, um, discovering all this stuff about his dad. He was in a very emotionally compromised place, so I think it's believable that he did. Um, I think it's believable that he did initially listen to Falcone. Now, it would have been an issue if when he heard the truth from Alfred, if he would have been like, "No, you're lying to me." That would have been stupid because there's no reason for him to not trust Alfred.
Exactly. Like
So,
Alfred's been by his side all his life.
yeah, so I'm glad that when Alfred told him the story, he just took his word for it. But Alfred could have been lying to protect Thomas Wayne, but I mean, we don't have a reason to believe that that's not true, unless in a future movie they do that, which I would really not like that. So I hope they don't do that. But yeah, Alfred basically says, "Hey, your dad didn't know that he was gonna kill that journalist. He was gonna turn him into the police, and then he died." And what I really like is when Bruce says, "So Falcone had my parents killed." Alfred says he really thinks that, but he doesn't really know. It could have just been some random mugger. He's spent his whole life trying to figure out, and he just can't figure it out because it's a great message that there are some things that you just cannot answer in life. And I think that's really good. That's really good to leave it ambiguous. Like, yeah, is it likely that Thomas and Martha were killed by Falcone? Yes. But there's no proof, and we don't really know.
See, that's the thing I like about like finding answers of who killed, like the origin of the superhero or like the character, because in the comics it's believed that the mugger was actually just like a common um John Doe, or it was connected to like one of the Carmine or like the Maroney families, or just someone like associated with the organization. But I think it works best if it's like if we don't know the answers or the answers are not given, because I don't think it should matter on like that mugger being associated with someone in order to destroy the Waynes. I think it could have been just an act of society and reality where just the common man makes a mistake, and that greatly sets in motion to something like the Batman, and not associated with like, oh, someone had it out for the Waynes, and instead just like this guy was just poor or had a hatred towards the rich, and he just kind of acted out on his own, and no one told him to. He just felt resentful.
So that scene when Alfred reaches out his hand and Bruce grabs it, and Bruce admits that like he's not scared of dying anymore, but he's still scared of losing someone he loves. That's just a beautiful scene. I love that scene. It was great.
Yeah.
Um, but then we move on. Selena tells Batman that Falcone is her father, though Falcone does not know it. She learns that Falcone strangled Annika, or Annika, however you want to say it, because Mitchell told her that Falcone was the informant and decides to kill him. Batman and Gordon arrive at the Iceberg Lounge in time to stop her, but the Riddler kills Falcone as he is arrested. The Riddler is soon unmasked as a forensic accountant, Edward Nashton, and is incarcerated in Arkham State Hospital, where he laments about failing to kill Bruce. He does not realize that Bruce is Batman, whom he idolizes and took inspiration from when targeting the corrupt. Nashton proposes a partnership, but Batman rejects him. Searching his apartment, Batman learns that Nashton has stationed car bombs around Gotham and cultivated an online following that plans to assassinate Mayor-elect Bella Real. So, I don't understand how how the whole phone call thing works, because so when Selena gets to her home, right, the phone is missing, and we can assume that the phone was taken by Falcone's gang when they took Annika. The thing is, if the case, so from what I understand is what I believe happened is they kidnapped her because they didn't kill her at the apartment. If they killed her at the apartment, there'd be evidence that she died there. There'd be like blood and stuff, right? Um, so they didn't kill her at the apartment. They grabbed, and they confirmed in the movie that Falcone doesn't really leave his penthouse. Like, he usually stays there. So Annika's kidnapped, take it to Falcone. Falcone confronts her, and then he strangles her, right?
Right.
So they didn't take her phone away. So that's kind of a problem in itself. But okay, they didn't take her phone away. She managed to get her phone and call, to call Catwoman's phone in order to leave this audio for her, right? But they didn't notice that her phone was ringing when they took her phone. So that's another problem. And then the final issue on top of all that is, why wouldn't they destroy both of their phones to destroy any evidence?
I think
So
I think I
it's
overlooked
like,
that detail. I don't remember it.
yeah, I totally overlooked it too. It was EFAP that made me recognize it. And then when I rewatched the movie, I was like, yeah, they shouldn't have that phone. So that's kind of a big issue. And for someone as careful as Falcone is and smart as Falcone is, that's kind of like, yeah, that's a big. So that's probably that's I think my biggest plot hole for the movie. And I'm gonna call this a plot hole as well because, well, I guess it's not a plot hole; it's a plot contrivance. But that's the biggest one in the movie because if that doesn't happen, if they destroyed the phones like they should, Catwoman doesn't find out what happens. She doesn't have a reason to go attack Falcone, and she doesn't have a reason to be part of the final act. So, yeah, I think that's kind of like a big, that's a big flaw, and I'm open to anyone in the comments if you have alternatives as to what might have happened, with the phone that would have allowed it to survive. Then by all means, I'm willing to hear it. But it can't be that they didn't take the phone because she says in the movie, "Oh, they took my phone." So if they took her phone, there was no reason for them to not destroy the phone for her to be able to get it back. Like, especially after it's been like 3 days, because at this point it's been like 3 or 4 days since the whole thing started. Um, but yeah, that's a kind of a shame that kind of fell through the cracks. That kind of stuff happens. There's really very few movies that you could probably find that you could say are perfect 10 out of 10s that don't have any flaws with the writing. But even still, you should do your best to try and to iron those out. But anyways, so one big thing here is Batman is basically trying to save Selina from herself. He's trying to keep Selina from actually killing somebody because he knows that if she does that, it's going to take her down a darker path. And I want to also point out that this is a Batman. You notice in this movie, this is a Batman that doesn't kill anybody. Oh, and I forgot to mention, when he did visit Falcone as Bruce Wayne, he came in through the front, just like he did as Batman. But because he was Bruce Wayne, they let him right through. And I think that was a learning moment for Bruce Wayne to realize that his Bruce Wayne persona does actually have uses.
Yeah, I think that was like the stepping stone to him learning how to embrace the persona of Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. And then this third time that he came to Falcone's place, he snuck in. So he learned from his mistakes. So he sneaks in, does all the Batman stuff, and then we get this awesome shot when the lights are off, the elevator opens up, and it's basically, apparently this was practical as well. Obviously, I don't think the bullets were practical, but I guess they were using blanks to basically light up the scene with the gunfire, and it looked so good. The problem I have with it is, so in this movie they made a point to show that Bruce does take damage. He's not indestructible. If he gets shot with a pistol, that'll make him like kind of flinch, right? But he gets shot with these fully automatic machine guns, which would actually, I guess maybe they didn't realize that fully automatic machine guns would have more power than a pistol. And they would be coming at you at a rapid speed. So I think the way to fix that and keep the scene looking real cool is if this would have been Batman's first time using a smoke bomb. Cause imagine like the room filled with smoke and the only thing lighting it up is the gunfire, and then the gunfire gets and that lits up the smoke even more, so it makes it like really like. I think that could have actually been an even cooler shot, honestly, and that would have fixed the problem of Batman needing to take on machine gun fire head on. But I digress. That's kind of a nitpick on my end for me. I just would have, it's a cool shot, very cool. Like he's coming in like the fucking Terminator, but Batman's not the Terminator. You know what I mean? He's supposed to be human.
Which I pointed out that that's another thing about the music too. Like everything, the music placement in this movie is so deliberate
it's
too.
perfect.
So like
So perfect.
so the way that scene played out was that he was actually hiding on top of the elevator shaft, and he like ambushed the guy like in it. So when he was like beating up everyone in the hallway in the dark, the way that the music played was just the theme song, but in a much bassier, more dynamic punch to it. So it played out as if Batman was impending doom. So he was just
Yeah,
coming after like
I think this is another example of the director wanting a shot and compromising reality for it. And again, I'm not going to complain about the shot because the shot's cool, but I'm complaining that if you wanted him to be a tank like Batman, then you shouldn't have shown him being vulnerable earlier in the movie. You get what I mean?
right.
Because you can't have it both ways. Because, I mean, if they would have given him a new, more armored suit for this scene, then I would have been like, okay, no, he's even more armored now. But this is the same Batsuit he's had the whole movie. So, yeah, that's why like I kind of have a problem with that. And I honestly do think like if you had a scene that opened up the same exact way, but once he took out the guy in the elevator, he dropped a smoke bomb, and then he took out everyone like stealth like, that would have been, I think, even cooler. Um, but
The only issue I can think of with the smoke bomb is that it's already dark, and you could still throw a smoke bomb, but I think with the smoke bomb,
well,
it's even
the thing
harder
with
to
the
see.
smoke, yeah, it's even harder to see, but Batman would be able to see it through it
But like the
because
only
he's got.
he would only be able to see it through it is if they fire, and like even with the smoke bomb. But the he would still
Well,
see
we
even
can
if it's in the
assume.
dark. But like with the
Well, we
smoke
can
bomb,
assume
it
he has
silhouettes it.
we can assume that he's the contacts he has also gives him other vision, because otherwise how does he see in that pitch black room? He has to have night vision with the contacts.
If that's the case with night vision contacts and the smoke bomb, then yeah, I think it would be a better alternative. But without, if that wasn't the case, I think it would have been much harder, and he would sustain even more damage without the like with the smoke bomb. If that
Well, how would he sustain more damage if they can't find him?
No, I'm saying like him seeing not only in the dark but like the smoke bomb to just like impair his vision. If he did not have the night vision contact, if it was just the normal contact of
Well,
recording.
he has to have night vision, otherwise it doesn't make sense that he can see them normally.
Well, I mean, depending on how the scene plays out, but like yeah, like the point is that he like I don't see him surviving like the barrage of bullets. Like, cause the thing about his chest plate is like it's able to take a lot of damage, but yeah, it could have been a different way to execute that scene. You know.
Yeah. But so he saves Falcone and he saves Selena, and they go out, and um yeah, he gets shot down. Falcone gets shot down by the Riddler. So Batman gives chase. They get to the apartment and they find out that the Riddler is actually at the nearby diner. Um, they arrest him, take him to Arkham. They confront, and then Batman and the Riddler speak, and the Riddler keeps saying Bruce Wayne, and then he's like, he's the only one. And dude, the way Batman looks at the camera, being like, "Fuck, like I'm done for. Like they're gonna know that I'm Bruce Wayne." And the way he keeps looking down, like he's not looking Riddler in the eye, like he's just like he looks defeated. But then when Riddler's like, he's the only one that got away, he then looks at him, And he's like, what? And the Riddler is like basically the Riddler is basically delusional. He thinks that they've been working together the whole time. The whole time. Excuse me. um, and Batman basically calls him out. He's like, "No, you're insane. Like, we're not working together." Like, and that's the Riddler goes crazy. By the way, I think Paul Dano. I will say the screaming, the ah, I think it was a little over the top, but. That aside, I think he does an amazing job portraying the Riddler.
Well, I actually like him just throwing a tantrum because despite him being very, um, I guess, detail oriented and planning out all his schemes, he's still very fractured mentally. So I think like this is the first time, well, it's the first time since his career as the Riddler, something went wrong and like or like not the way that he wanted it. He kind of just, I guess he
It literally didn't go the way he wanted it to go.
yeah, so he just freaked out, and I think that the way he screamed was very natural, and that added more weight to
I mean,
how
I like
crazy he
it.
is.
I just don't. I like it, but if someone says that they don't like it, I understand it. Like that's one of those things where I wouldn't. If someone was like, "Yeah, I thought he was over the top. I didn't like it," I would be like, "I understand that." Like it was an interesting choice as an actor, because the way he screams is like he's not screaming at the top of his lungs. He's like, this is not like it's kind of like midway screaming, and I don't know if that's just the way he screams, or if that was just kind of like he did a restrained stream or scream. Said stream.
But the thing,
but either way,
the thing I see it is
I
that
liked it.
the thing I see it is that maybe, I mean, it could be that like, you know how people with autism or like some type of disability, they kind of just like scream if they're upset or something like that. That's if someone explained it to me like that, and how the Riddler kind of has that mentality, or at least that type of behavior, then I would believe it.
Right. I mean, I liked it. I'm just saying, like, if someone didn't like it, I'd understand.
Right.
Um, but anyways, so the bombs destroy the breakwaters around Gotham and flood the city. A shelter is set up in an indoor area. It's Gotham Square Garden, definitely inspired by Madison Square Garden, where Nashton's followers shoot but fail to kill Real. They are stopped by Batman and Selina. In the aftermath, Nashton befriends another inmate, while Selina deems Gotham beyond saving and leaves. Batman aids recovery efforts and vows to inspire hope in Gotham. Well, they really, really summarized the ending of the movie. That's all they have for the last part of the movie.
Dude, they left so much shit out.
Okay, so basically what happens is Batman returns to cuz he's like Riddler's like, "Oh, like you really didn't figure out the rest of my plan." The problem I have here with this part of the plan, if Batman figured out the plan before visiting the Riddler, so would have the cops.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a flaw in his plan. Also, I'm kind of 50-50 on this final part of his plan because everyone he killed so far was very specific for very specific reasons, right? Like, I'm killing this guy because he's part of the corruption. I killed Bruce Wayne because of my personal vendetta. Some people, I heard a complaint that, like, oh, personal vendetta doesn't match. I mean, yeah, it doesn't match the rest. Like, yeah, Bruce isn't corrupt himself, but if he has a personal vendetta, why wouldn't he kill Bruce Wayne too? You sent me this video by New Rockstars. Look, I know people like New Rockstars. I get it. To me, like, I've seen like 3 videos of his, and to me, he seems like those YouTubers. And I've seen his thumbnails, and he always does those stupid ass red circles with the arrows. I hate that shit. I really feel like he did a video explaining that, oh, the Riddler actually knew who Batman was the whole time, or whatever, or potentially knew. And to me, like, I felt like I was in a trance listening to that video because I just felt like he was telling me nothing new and was just re-saying what happened in the movie and saying, and this means that. And it's like, yes, it is possible that Riddler knew who Bruce was anyways, even though he claimed that he didn't. But if he knew who Bruce was, what, like, he says that in Hush that he could threaten Batman, but Batman says a riddle isn't a good riddle if everyone knows the answer to it. But that happens in Hush. That doesn't happen in this. So why wouldn't this version, like at the end of the movie when his plan gets, it doesn't even get foiled. It just kind of doesn't go the full way he wanted it to. He's like depressed over it. He's like, ah. But why wouldn't he be like cocky, being like, I actually know who Bruce Wayne is, and I'm gonna use that against him. Like that's the thing is like, I don't think there's. Yeah, you could theorize that he does know who Bruce Wayne actually is, like who Batman actually is, but I don't think he does. I don't think it lines up.
I think the reason why he kept repeating Bruce Wayne is because he is trying to get into Batman's head and saying that Bruce Wayne and his family, the Waynes, is the root of all of the corruption because they were the founding families along with the Arkhams of Gotham City.
Yeah, I think he's repeating Bruce Wayne because Bruce Wayne is the one he has a personal vendetta against Bruce Wayne because he felt like, yeah, he himself was an orphan as well. But did anyone talk about him? Did anyone talk about the other orphans that he grew up with? No, they talked about Bruce Wayne, who was a rich billionaire, because it makes for a better headline.
So I think people, what they interpreted, which is pretty common when they saw the movie, was that they thought that he is taunting Batman and teasing him that like he knows who's behind the mask. But he even says
yeah,
it.
And I thought that first too. I was like, oh fuck, he knows.
Yeah, but he even said that like I don't like it doesn't matter who's behind the mask because the mask itself, like the actual costume, is the true version of that person. So even let's say he did knew, I don't think he was gonna do anything with that information because despite like his vendetta against the Waynes, I think he would rather see Batman destroy himself. Like Bruce and Batman destroy himself if he knew.
If he did know, I don't think he would have risked killing him. And on top of that, if he did know who he was, then I don't think he would hate him anymore once he realizes that Bruce is fighting against the corruption with him. But I think once Batman made it clear that they're not on the same side, and if he knew who Bruce Wayne was, I don't think he would hesitate to use that against him. But I mean, that's all like theorizing. I personally think he doesn't know who Batman is. But anyways, so one neat thing is that they show that he actually gained a following. He had like 500 followers or whatever, and he made a goodbye video or whatever explaining his final plan. And this is something I'm 50-50 on. So his final plan involved bombing the walls around Gotham City, which would it's supposed to flood out the city so that way it would corner all the most wealthy people so that way they could get killed, right? But the problem with that is you're not just when you blow up those walls, you're literally killing all the homeless people as well. So I don't like that. Like, I mean, it makes for a cool scene and it makes for a cool ending, but I don't think that lines up with the rest of his plan, honestly.
Plus, also, they could have also, instead of just cornering them into one area, those rich could also go up to higher ground. Like, they could literally just travel to a different building.
Well, the thing is, like, those rich people were already going to be there because Rial was getting inducted as the mayor.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So he didn't even need to do that. They were all there, you know? And Rial is shown to be, like, not corrupt, but I'll give some leeway by saying he believes that she will become corrupt. But yeah, so I don't like that part of his plan, like flooding out the city. I would have preferred, you know what I would have preferred, actually? What would have been better, in my opinion, is if the Riddler's audience took on a mind of their own and they themselves decided to flood the city. I think that would work better because then that means that it's not part of Riddler's plan. Because Riddler's plan, what would have been good if Riddler's plan would have been just get the forces on the top of the of Gotham Square Garden, get them on the top, shoot down the mayor, and shoot down all the other corrupt officials that are going to be there. That would have been a great part of his plan, and then they could have had it where the fucking audience took a mind of their own, and they're like, okay, well, we're also gonna wash out Gotham because Gotham is beyond redemption, and we gotta just flood it all out. I think that would have been better because we don't know who the audience of the Riddler is. They're just a collective of people, and it could show that a following of people can take a mind of their own and warp the ideas of the original person to be even more dangerous. I think that could have been a good solution for my problem. Um, but yeah, as it stands, I don't really like that part of the plan. But they're all there. They're gonna shoot down Bella Real, and they shoot her. But Batman comes in and beats the shit out of everyone. He's taking everyone down. He's using his bat claw. Really cool scene. Awesome fight scene. And then near the end of the fight scene, he gets a shotgun, like point blank, and that kind of like fucks him up. Catwoman comes in for the save, and then she starts getting attacked by one of the Riddler's goons, and so he opens up a port and he injects himself with this green thing. Now, at first, I was like, oh, that's adrenaline, but then that's because I forgot about Venom. I'm very certain that is Venom that he took.
But what do you mean by Venom?
Venom, that's what Bane takes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, not Venom, not that Venom.
No, I know, but I'm saying like I thought there was like I don't know, I just didn't like I forgot
Yeah,
I forgot what it was called, like the actual drug that Bane took. But
yeah,
but that's interesting
but
how
yeah,
like it's drops and now Venom. So like the products of these villains are already established, but like the actual villains themselves have not, which I think that's interesting.
yeah, because before, I believe in the comics, before Bane was even shown, Venom was introduced in Batman's storyline as a drug he started taking and he became like addicted to or whatever. Um, so yeah, that'll be an interesting thing to do. We'll see if that goes anywhere or if that's just like there just in case Matt Reeves wants to go anywhere with it. Um, but yeah, he takes it. He goes to beat up the guy, almost probably kills him. And then when they stop him and unmask the dude, they ask him who he is, and the guy is just like, "I'm vengeance." And that's when Batman realizes that his way of saving the city isn't going to save it. So then they notice like this giant cable is gonna land in the water and shock everyone and kill everyone that's in the water. So Batman goes to he goes to snip it. He gets shocked, but he doesn't die. He then goes to help the people that are under the rubble with this flare, and you get this nice shot of all. And the first person he saves is the kid from the beginning of the movie. And the amount of times they show him leads me to believe that he's just straight up gonna become
Robin.
Robin. And I hope if they do Robin, they go with Kid Robin, because this Batman's too young to have another teenager by his side. But they need to justify him having a kid under his wing.
Which if this is
no pun intended.
Which if this is the case where he does become Robin, I really hope it's Dick Grayson as like the first Robin, because in the comics, the thing about the comics and the movie is that Dick Grayson in the comics, he was raised on the circus, and his parents are acrobats where they kind of just swing around and do tricks in the air. But then I forgot like what was the reason, but they basically fall to their deaths, and then Dick Grayson kind of just feels that he was traumatized, and he feels like he was responsible for that because he wasn't there.
Well, no, Dick Grayson's parents were killed by like mobsters, I think.
No, I think Dick Grayson, he was raised in the circus with his family.
He was raised in the circus, the Flying Graysons.
Yeah, the Flying Graysons.
But his family were killed by like the mob or something during one of their performances.
Which, that's from the comics. So the way I see it for this movie is that they could change his origin, where his family were raised in the circus at a younger age and were known as the Flying Graysons. But I think they retired, and his father that was the mayor kind of got helped from obviously Carmine Falcone. So
Yeah, what they could do, because his name's Don Mitchell, so his last name's Mitchell, but they could have the wife's name be Grayson, and maybe after all the stuff that happened in Gotham, she decides to give her son her last name instead, and so then he could be named Dick Grayson, and they could figure out a way to do it. But if this is just a brand new Robin, like just a new name, I don't mind that. Cause like, I mean, the whole circus thing. I mean, circuses aren't really relevant nowadays anymore.
yeah, but I'm saying like I'm totally fine if they change the origin or tweak it to fit with this universe.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but anyways, so he saves all those people, and there's this great shot of him with the flare and all the people following behind him. Um,
Which that also I've heard people say that in the beginning he embodies himself to be part, or if not like the shadows themselves, but from that shot they say that it's actually him becoming the light, so he's leading
he's the
people.
light and the shadow.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he's leading people out of the shadows, so it's a cool parallel from the beginning to the end.
Oh yeah, and at the end he realizes that vengeance alone is not going to save the city. He has to become a symbol of hope, and I think that's just amazing, honestly.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff.
But so at this point we cut to the Riddler whining in a cell, and he meets who is the Joker. This scene, I feel like could have either been cut out or put as in post-credit scene, because the movie's long enough as it is, and this scene doesn't really add to the story itself. So this is one scene that I thought could have been pushed to the post-credit scene, and then the next scene is Batman and Catwoman speaking, and they decide that to go their separate ways. And it's a great shot, great shots, great scene. This, I think, as well, not a post-credit scene, could have been a mid-credit scene, because when they're playing Something in the Way and they're showing Batman saving the people, and it has the shot of him looking up, you know, that's an amazing shot. That would have been a great shot to end the movie with, and then you just cut to the credits. And then you could have put a mid-credit scene, the Catwoman thing, and then a post-credit scene, the Joker thing. But um, those are the only scenes that I think I would change, because I think people are saying, oh, you could have cut like 30 minutes from the movie. I don't think that's true. I think those are the only two scenes that you could have cut and not lose anything.
Yeah, like a lot of people complain that it's too long of a movie and they could have like shortened it and still delivered the story. But I think the length of this movie is what was needed to tell this type of story. I think, dude, that's another thing about the length, but also it's like it's so long. Like this movie's so long, I had to check my watch 2 or 3 times. I'm like, bro, then I mean that's just personal preference, but for me, I was fully absorbed into the movie. Like the first and the second time, I didn't even check my watch once, and this movie to be this long is what was needed to tell the story and to be able to give everyone just enough screen time to have some type of development. Of course, not everyone gets the same character development, but I think the length served justice for everybody.
Justice.
Justice. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say though, those two scenes, the ending Catwoman scene and the Joker scene, could have moved those to mid and post credit scenes, because I think it would have been perfect to end on him saving people and just that shot of him and being all dirty and whatnot. I think that would have been a perfectly good place to end the movie there. But that's pretty much the movie. Yeah. So, like I said before, my opinion hasn't changed on it. I still give it an 8 out of 10 because of those issues that I brought up, some of them bigger than others. The two biggest issues with the movie is, I think, the Riddler's plan at the end. First of all, well, I guess it's three issues. The first issue is the thing with the phone that really doesn't make sense and cannot be explained unless someone does explain it to me. The thing about the Riddler wanting Batman to know the plan before he met up with him, like, that would have ruined his whole plan because that would have given the cops so much time to stop it. And then third, the fact that he had the plan to flood out the city doesn't to me line up with the rest of Riddler's plans. Some people have used the excuse, oh, he's just crazy. But I respect the filmmakers more than just the excuse that he's crazy. Because yeah, he's crazy, but he has he has a very clear mission, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that last part of the plan doesn't line up with the rest of his mission because he's just killing the other orphans, homeless, downtrodden people that he's supposed to be helping. So those are my three biggest issues, and to me, that brings the score down to an 8 out of 10 instead of a 9 out of 10. If you want more specifically what my opinion is, the movie personally, because I usually when I score a movie, I have two scores, my objective and my subjective score. My objective score would be like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, but my subjective score is like a 9 or 10. Like, I really, really love this movie. I have not been able to stop talking about it. Like, ask any of my family or friends. I'm in love with this movie. I think it's amazing. I think it's the best Batman movie since The Dark Knight. Maybe even better. I have to rewatch that because I haven't seen it in a while. But if it's not better than The Dark Knight, it's very close. And I'm really looking forward to the future of this franchise. Do you have any final thoughts before we go into our outro?
Um, so I kind of agree. The way I see it is for my score of a subjective and objective, the subjective obviously would be between like a 9.5 and a 10. And objective, I would say objectively I would still give it like maybe between an 8.5 to close to a 9, because despite all the issues, I personally don't think that they're that big of an issue. They're still an issue, but I think it doesn't deteriorate from the story that much for me personally. So I probably give it a higher score because, as you know, I acknowledge the issues and I do agree, but I think the severity isn't as great as compared to yours. So I would still rank it high enough that despite the issues, it's still a great, fantastic film and probably one of the best Batman films, if not the best Batman film. And I would say it would probably be on par with The Dark Knight. I would have to rewatch it as well because it's been many, many years. But it's honestly, I probably rank it one of the best comic book movies of all time. At the very least, top 10 for the Batman among
Yeah.
like DC and Marvel, you know?
Yeah. So to talk about how the movie's doing, the movie right now is sitting at $300 million. The budget being 185 to 200 million. The score on IMDb, because we're not going to look at Rotten Tomatoes because that fucking website is trash. IMDb right now is sitting with 186K ratings. It is at 8.5 out of 10. So a very, very good score. Yeah, I think this movie's great. What's coming up next for this series? So it's been confirmed that this Batman is gonna have his own cinematic universe with 2 sequels planned. There was gonna be a GCPD series that was canceled and then evolved into an Arkham series. And already has been confirmed and ordered by HBO Max a Penguin series. So that's what we can look forward to. Where do you think? Because I've seen Matt Reeves talk about doing Mr. Freeze. He really wants to do Mr. Freeze. Where do you think it's gonna go?
So I think you can still put Mr. Freeze in either the second or the third sequel. It depends on the story, because the way that this movie was set up, like the ending, entails the Nightfall storyline. So I think they should introduce Bane into the second movie, and they could still throw in Mr. Freeze. I just don't know like how, but it could be the case of like the Arkham City game, where there's a district of Gotham that's flooded or deserted, and like different villains rise up or escape, and they kind of like take over certain parts of that district. So the sequel could be a combination between Nightfall and the Arkham City game. And I would like to see Bane and Mr. Freeze and either Scarecrow or the Mad Hatter. But I think they're more likely to do Scarecrow because he's more well known. What I think they should do with the Arkham series, the way that Matt Reeves describes it, is that it's a horror haunted house movie. So that already like got me interested in the series even more because there's so many options they could pick to develop the horror aspect. They could literally put in Professor Pig. They could put in Mad Hatter.
Oh my god, Professor Pig is so fucking scary. I kind of don't. He's so gross. I don't like him.
I mean, but it fits with the.
No, it
fits
fits.
with
I'm
it,
just
though.
saying.
I mean,
I'm just saying he's.
I think it would be interesting
Girl,
to see
he was
him.
so scary in Arkham Knight. Like holy shit.
Dude, remember the fucking jump scare of Man-Bat in Arkham Knight?
Bro, fuck that guy. That guy sucks. I hated that.
What, of Man-Bat?
The jump scare.
Oh, the jump scare, yeah.
What an asshole.
Dude, but I don't know. Like, I think it depends on what they do with the sequels. But one thing I really wish or hope they do make out of it is introduce the Court of Owls as like the big main threat for the trilogy.
There's definitely would like to see a lot of things. I kind of hope they hold off on the Joker as long as they can, because we've gotten a lot of Joker. I'm a little jokered out, so I would really appreciate if they hold off on Joker. I don't mind that they revealed him, just kind of like hold off on him being a main villain. You can have he could be a side villain for all I care, but just kind of like chill out with the Joker for a bit.
Yeah,
give us some breathing room. Look, Joker. It's not you, it's me. I just need some time, okay?
You know, it would be so weird if they kind of like put him on the sideline, but they bring in Harley Quinn as the Joker position, like Joker role, you know?
Oh, like they make her the main villain? I wouldn't like that.
No, I'm saying that would be weird.
That would be weird. There'd be a sign of Hollywood interfering with their politics yet again. But anyways, that's a totally different topic. So, as I said earlier, the way this podcast is going to work, it's a weekly podcast. It means episodes every week. Sunday, 3 p.m. EST is when they will be premiering. However, this is a pre-recorded podcast. So think of this as week 1. Week 2, which is next week, will be a live podcast. And then it'll rotate like that. And basically, for the live podcasts, what we are going to do is we're going to do tier lists and tier list / reviews of a band's discography. And considering that in this episode we talked about the Batman, I thought there was no better band for us to review than Nirvana. So, me and JT will, on our own time, listen to Nirvana's discography, and come next Sunday, it's not going to be strict to Sunday. It'll either be Friday, Saturday, Sunday that we will live stream our podcast, and we will discuss where we think, because they only have 3 albums, where we think those 3 albums stand amongst each other. So be sure to catch us next week for me and JT. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. Peace out.
Yeah, peace.